Who do you say that Jesus is? This is a question that I've heard many times in my life. I've been asked by many people. My family, my friends, random people that I've met as I've traveled from city to city. Even Jesus himself asked me that question. Who do you say I am? And I've come to realize at this point in my life that the question of who Jesus is one of the most significant questions that you have to answer in order to have faith. And I could answer that question simply for you, but I don't think that will do it justice. So I want to tell you stories about why I believe what I believe about Jesus. I want to tell you why I believe that Jesus is the Son of God. Now, my first experience with Jesus happened a few years back. I was a fisherman. My brother Andrew and I grew up fishing. Our father was a great fisherman. We liked to fish on the Sea of Galilee. That's where we had made our living our whole lives. And one day we were untangling our nets and we tossed it out. And as the net fell into the water, I looked up and there on the shore, I saw him for the very first time. It was Jesus. And he was mesmerizing. We couldn't take our eyes away. He hadn't said anything. He was just standing there. And then he looks at Andrew and I, and he says, "Come follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." Fishers of men? What does that mean? I didn't know. I didn't understand. But what I did know was that I wanted to follow Jesus. And I was going to. So Andrew and I, we gathered up our nets, we put them away. And we handed our business off to our fellow fishermen. Jesus called us, and we left everything that we knew. We left our family and our friends and our business. And I didn't realize what was going to happen. But following Jesus changed everything about my life. Absolutely everything. Jesus even changed my name. He said, "You'll no longer be known as Simon. From now on, you'll be called Peter." And since that day, I've gone by the name of Peter. And after Andrew and I started following Jesus, he walked around and he gathered 10 more guys to follow him. There were 12 of us total. And so we followed Jesus. And he invested in all of us. But there were some of us that he took an even greater interest in. Me, James, and John. James and John were brothers. They were called the sons of Zebedee. They were super bold guys. And one day, Jesus asked the three of us to go with him up a mountain. And so we were following him up the mountain, and we didn't really know where we were going or why we were going. But Jesus had a plan. And as we got to the top of the mountain, the most incredible thing happened. I don't know if I can adequately describe to you what I saw. But as we got up on the mountain, we looked at Jesus, and suddenly it wasn't just Jesus. His clothes were shining brighter. It's the brightest white I've ever seen. It was brighter than if we were to stare into the sun. James, John, and I had to shield our eyes because of the light. We didn't want to go blind. And finally, the intensity of the light began to fade. And as we lowered our arms, it wasn't just Jesus standing before us. It was Jesus, Moses, and Elijah. Moses and Elijah with Jesus. We're talking about two of the greatest guys in Jewish history. Moses led the people out of Egypt. Elijah single-handedly challenged all the prophets of Baal. And Jesus was standing there talking to these two men who had died like they were best friends. Does Jesus know them? We were terrified. so in my moment of terror, I decided to say something. So I said, Jesus, it's good that we're here. Let us build 3 shelters. One for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. It was a silly thing to say, but as soon as I had finished, a cloud covered us and filled the top of the mountain. And from this cloud, I heard the voice of God, and he said, "This is my son, whom I love. Listen to him." And this isn't the first time that I've heard the voice of God. When Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist, God spoke from heaven, and he said, "This is my son whom I love, and with him I am well pleased." It was incredible to see, incredible to witness. So who is Jesus? Jesus is the Son of God. But that's not where the story ends. At another point in time, we were in the temples, and Jesus spent a lot of time challenging the religious authorities, the higher-up guys, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Zealots. It didn't matter who. And they were really frustrated with Jesus because he didn't have education. He grew up being trained as a carpenter by his father Joseph. But yet he could hang with the best of the best. He was just as smart as they were, and they were constantly trying to trick him. And one day they came to Jesus and they said, "You're a Samaritan and demon-possessed." Incredibly bold accusations to make, because Jews didn't like the Samaritans. I didn't like the Samaritans at that time. We wanted to have nothing to do with them. And to call Jesus demon-possessed? Crazy? No, he wasn't that. And so Jesus challenges them back, and he starts to talk about Abraham, and talks like he knows Abraham. Abraham, the father of our people. And then Jesus makes this bold claim, and he says, "Truly, I tell you, before Abraham was, I am." I was shocked. I couldn't believe the claim that Jesus was making. Because you have to understand, when Moses led Israel out of Egypt, when he was talking to God at the burning bush, he said to God, "God, who do I tell them sent me?" And God says to Moses, "Tell them that I am is the one who has sent you." And Jesus just said that he is. I am. Jesus is God. He existed before Abraham. He could not have made a bolder claim. And because of that, all the religious leaders, all the men around picked up stones, and they were ready to kill Jesus. And then, miraculously, Jesus slips through the crowd. No one touches him. No one throws a stone. It wasn't his time. But who is Jesus? Jesus is the Son of God. But that's not where the story ends. One day, we were near a town of Bethany. Mary and Martha, 2 of our friends, had a brother named Lazarus, and Lazarus was really sick. He was on his deathbed, and they sent word to Jesus, and they said, "Jesus, please come. Our brother is sick, and we know that you'll heal him." But Jesus didn't come right away. And then we received word a couple days later that Lazarus had died. He had passed away, and they were telling Jesus that he didn't need to come. But Jesus had a different plan. And so finally, after another day, we headed toward Bethany. And as we approached the city, Martha got word that Jesus was coming. And so she ran outside of the city to meet him. And she said, "Lord, Jesus, I know that if you had been here, that my brother would have lived, that he would still be with us today. But I don't have any worries, because I know that I will see him again in the day of the resurrection." And Jesus says to her, "Martha, anyone who believes me, anyone who follows me, will not see death. Do you believe this?" And Martha says, "Yes, Jesus, I do. I believe that I won't see death because you are the Messiah. You are the Son of God." And I didn't realize then the significance of what Martha was saying, like I do now. But Martha understood that Jesus was the Son of God. Now that was significant. Because see, I knew Martha before she had met Jesus. And I knew Martha after she met Jesus. And she was a completely different woman. Because she understood that Jesus was the Son of God. And that because He was the Son of God, it changes everything. And it changed everything about her life. She went from living a sinful life to living a holy life. And then, after Jesus talks with Martha, He walks into the city. And He goes and He finds Mary. And He's deeply moved. He sees Mary weeping for her brother, weeping for the lost. He sees all these people hurting and broken. And without saying a word, Jesus sits down with Mary and He weeps. He cries with her. And then, Jesus was deeply moved again. And he stands up. And He walks over to the tomb. And He says, "Roll the stone away." All of us are a little taken aback. Martha runs up and she says, "But Jesus, Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. There's going to be a foul odor that comes from there if we roll the stone away." Jesus says, "Roll the stone away." At this point, we're all sitting on the edge of our seat. What's going to happen? The only sound that you could hear was the sound of the stone being rolled away. And I looked over at Jesus, and I see Him standing there. And his lips are moving, but I can't hear what He's saying. I want to know what He's saying, so I lean in. Everyone's leaning in. And then finally, the stone is rolled away, and we get a wave of the smell, the odor, from a man who's been dead for 4 days. All of us are covering our noses, except for Jesus. And I look over at Him, and His lips start moving faster. It's clear to me now that He's praying. And then Jesus looks up to the heavens, and He raises His arms, and He says, "Father, thank You for hearing me. I know that You have always heard me. But this is for the benefit of the people, that they may believe that You've sent me." And then there's a pause. And then Jesus looks back into the tomb and He yells, "Lazarus, come out!" We're all looking back, we're squinting, trying to see if there's going to be any movement. What is Jesus doing? Lazarus is dead. He's been dead for 4 days. And then just when I start to doubt Jesus, from the back I see movement. And out comes Lazarus, still wrapped in his grave clothes. He's alive. This man that has been dead for 4 days has been brought back to life. Who is this man? He's Jesus, and He's the Son of God. Who else could bring someone back from the dead? It was incredible. And one day, Jesus comes to us, the disciples, and He says, "Who do you guys say I am?" And I was nervous. I was scared because I understood that my answer to this question mattered more than anything in the world. Who is Jesus? It is the most important question. And finally, I worked up the nerve and I said, "Jesus, You're the Messiah. You're the Son of the living God." And Jesus says, "Yes, Peter. Yes. And on this confession, I'm going to build the church. Our whole church. The church is built on the fact that Jesus is the Son of the living God." So who is Jesus? He's the Son of God. But if these stories aren't enough, then consider this. I was there when Jesus walked on water. When he called me out of the boat. I started walking towards him and got distracted and fell, but Jesus grabbed me. He pulled me back up and I walked back to the boat on water with Jesus. I was there when Jesus fed 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. I was there when Jesus talked with a Samaritan woman. When he ate with the outcast people. When he touched a man who had leprosy. I was there. And I was there with Jesus in the upper room, sharing the Last Supper. And I was there with Jesus in the garden, when he prayed so hard that his sweat turned to drops of blood. I was there. I was there when Judas walked up to Jesus and betrayed him with a kiss. And I was there when I cut the servant's ear off and Jesus healed him. I was there when Jesus stood before Pilate. I was there when Jesus was flogged. And when I denied Jesus for the 3rd time, I looked up and he was staring right at me. And my heart was broken because I knew who Jesus was. I knew that he was the Son of God. But I hadn't let it hit my heart yet. I didn't understand in my heart what that meant and how that's supposed to change everything. And I was there when Jesus was crucified. But that's not where the story ends. I was also there when Jesus rose from the dead 3 days later. I raced John to the tomb to see if what Mary and Martha had said was true, to see if Jesus was in fact not there. And I was in the upper room when Jesus walked through the door. When Thomas approached him and put his fingers in the holes that the nails had made. I was there. I know what I saw. And I was there when Jesus ascended up to heaven and he promised his Spirit would come on us. That same Spirit that lived in Jesus lives in me, and it lives in his church. It's in all of us. We're capable of doing great things for God's kingdom. Things like Jesus did. So who is Jesus? He's the Son of the living God. If he's not who he says he is, if Jesus isn't the Son of God, then there's no point in us being here today. There's no point in us talking. There's no reason for me to tell you about Jesus. Because we're still drowning in our sin. We're still separated from God. And we are doomed to eternity in hell. Who is Jesus? Jesus is the Son of God. It's the most important question that you can ever answer. And how you answer affects your entire life. Because I found myself that I can't just say that Jesus is the Son of God. I have to live like it. And when you live like Jesus is the Son of God, your life is full of hope. And everything has meaning. So just as Jesus looked at me one day and he said, "Peter, who do you say I am?" He's the Son of God. I ask you that same question today. Who do you say that Jesus is?